Welcome to the Just Word Podcast. I'm Pat Bolland. The Just Word Podcast is brought to you by Justwealth, investing the way it should be, just for you. Ryan, great to meet you virtually. I got to say, it's a real pleasure. I don't often get to talk to ex-captain of the Habs.
Thanks, Pat. Good to meet you too.
You started your career with a bang, so to speak. You had a rough and tumble kind of style and physical style with the Capitals, I think, for about 4 years, then that big blockbuster deal with the Habs. And I want to talk about all of that, obviously, but I also want to get your thoughts, if we could, on the latest run by les Canadiens in the Stanley Cup. What did you think?
Yeah, that was a great run. It was awesome to see a Canadian team finally in the finals. Um, but I think that it's always disappointing when you get to a cup final and lose. And I've experienced both of those emotions. We lost a cup to Calgary in 1989. And what I learned from that is just the no-brainer idea that it's a lot of expended energy, right? It almost feels like waste to get to a cup final and lose. On the other hand, I think it's going to be a great opportunity to mature some of the young players. It's great experience when young players can learn not only how to play in the NHL, but also how to play in the NHL playoffs. That's a different level. That experience pays off, and so, in losing, they're going to win some things.
Okay, but you have to admit, the strength of the team this year was an outstanding performance in net. Price was unbelievable. Is that repeatable?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, Carey Price is a very mature NHL goalie right now. And is he, the general manager there is going to have to decide, is he sort of, on the top cresting and on his way down, or can he continue that game? I believe that from a goaltender point of view, as long as he stays healthy, that a player like Carey Price will stay on his game. And so you can replicate, I think, that type of performance. If you look at the playoffs, so this year, you have to look at my goalie. If my goalie is better than your goalie, I win.
Yeah.
That's the concept at the NHL level right now. And so, both goalies in the final were really good. And the goalies, the teams that had success, even into the semifinals, had to have good goaltending.
Yeah, that's the old Lou Lamoriello style too. Build from the goal out. Get yourself a good goalie, decent defenseman, and the forwards you can rotate through. It's an old style play. I guess it's kind of coming back.
Yeah, it works at every level for sure.
You know, you had a tremendous career, including, as you point out, a Stanley Cup victory. Although I think you were injured for a good portion of that season per se. What do you see as your own personal highlight in your hockey playing career? And then I'll bring it past the hockey playing career.
Yeah, I think, Pat, because I always wanted to, be portrayed and have the reality of my career be about team, that it had to be that team win. I mean, I broke my ankle with 3 games to go in that season in 86 and came back for the last 5 games. So I'm so thankful to have been a small part of that team. But I think because hockey is such a team focus that, my mind goes right away less towards, me winning whatever, and our team, accomplishing goals and doing stuff together. So both 86 and 89 were powerful years that I really have focus on. The other thing that I loved about the 80s and playing in Montreal was there was so much pressure there. And so pressure to win. And so, I learned a lot about myself in those years. And I think what's fun, Pat, is that experience and that learning really has become what my wife Jenny and I do now from a leadership development point of view. You know, we've had to learn some lessons back then, and we're really curious from a research point of view on how to share those lessons and train people. And so it's really spawned, you know, another side, a down the road side of our life also.
Okay, so I love this focus on team because when I was in the investment industry many years ago, I only hired people who had come from a team environment. They understood everybody's role and their function within that particular team. And it applies to the business world. How have you been able to translate your team experience in hockey to your business career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's not as easy as athletes think. For whatever reason, you know, because the cultures are different, and sometimes, you know, I love the principles that transfer. Certainly, leadership, you know, personal high performance, you know, team feel, culture, words. We have a couple of concepts that we hang our team stuff on, like a simple concept around language creates or defines reality. So that team language is incredibly important. And, you know, we try to have influence as leaders around that language. But what I found was that just as the Washington Capitals had a different culture than the Montreal Canadiens, and that the Vancouver Canucks at the end of my career, so do each of the teams that, you know, are in business. And so what I found was it's hard to take one brush, one, you know, red brush, and say, okay, this works across all team. So I found it actually interesting, Pat, and at times a little difficult.
Yeah, I'll bet. And walk me through an example of what you call language. I'm not thoroughly understanding what you mean. Is it the words or is it the feeling?
Yeah, great catch. Both. It's all parts of language, you know, obviously body language. I'll give you a quick example where we're working with leaders these days in a very interesting area. Um, I have found over the years, and I'm sure you have also, that maybe by accident on purpose. So sometimes things just happen, sometimes we're really intentional. But by accident on purpose, I have found that great cultures and great leadership often gets defined by what we say about people when they're not in the room.
Interesting.
That is such a powerful piece, right? Because when we talk down people, when they're not in the room, what are we saying to the person that we're talking to? What's in their brain is, I wonder if that's what he does when I'm not in the room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right, it creates a cycle.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I'm going to extend the conversation because I know I coached women's hockey, young girls, my daughters, and then they grew up and I've coached at a high level in lacrosse for women in particular, and I found that they're very different to coach than males, for instance. And you had, or I wonder if you've had a similar experience because you did the Canadian national women's team.
Yes, wonderful athletes, incredible people. I think the one difference that I noticed was that they actually did what the coach asked them to do. They were way better at, you know, if you said, hey, you know, go in the corner, you know, battle for the puck, and then get the puck back to the, you know, to the defenseman at the blue line to get a shot on net for a, let's say it's a drill in practice. the ladies executed perfectly, and they would do the exact thing that you asked. The guys were much more, they would create things. So, okay, if the pass was open to the D, they'd do that, or they would maybe do something different. So I loved coaching the national women's team. Brilliant athletes, amazing people, and that was a great experience.
Yeah, I'll go back though, because my experience with coaching women is that you have to kind of have structured social time, if you will, at least looser time that they can socially interact with each other. And it goes back to your language conversation and culture, doesn't it? Allowing them to have and create their own culture.
Hmm. Love that idea totally, and the idea that the words that we focus on actually accelerate that cultural definition is powerful. So we're working with a lot of leaders right now on simple stuff like what words do you want to show up more in your culture.
Yeah.
Is it patience? Is it camaraderie? Is it friendship? Is it energy? Is it performance? And the words that we focus on often not only show up but then get talked about more.
Hmm. Yeah. So I have two questions out of that. On the business side of things, how do you get your business? And I guess that we can save that. But I want to get this one out of the way, if I may, because you've got three boys as well. What's the most important lesson that you sent them off in their life with?
Yeah, great question. I think that I had a chance to coach all three boys in minor hockey, and I think that the driving the boys to the 5 a.m. practices in the morning. It's funny about teenagers, especially. In the best conversations we ever had with our kids was when we were driving, because the driver is looking forward and the passengers looking forward. You don't have to look at each other, and you can sort of talk about anything. And those were great conversations. And I think just that time, right? That alone time, that connected time, that coaching time, certainly from my perspective, were times that I loved with our kids. Um, I'm not sure that I have one thing, that I sort of sent them off with. I learned some lessons through hard knocks. And the one thing that whether I've done this, Jenny and I have done this well or not, is we've allowed our kids to experience life. And my mom and dad let me leave home at 15 years old to play junior hockey. And I tried to not, unless the kids asked for advice, I tried not to give too much. Let them experience it. If they run into, a wall or something, I'd love to be their backup plan. And so I don't know if that's right or wrong, Pat, but that's sort of what happened in our life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through the same kind of an experience. Now, to the other part of the question, the business side, if you will, how do you get your business? Because you went from hockey and ownership, and Abbotsford, obviously, broadcasting was part of the equation there as well. How do you get your current business? How do people know about your motivational efforts?
Yeah, thank you. We do a lot of leadership development and a lot of coaching these days over Zoom. That's been a big transition. Being going from in person to over Zoom in the COVID environment. In a nutshell, people can go to ryanwalter.com. That's probably the easiest, just quick way. And I love talking to people. So, I ask people to go to, ryanwalter.com and just get a hold of us, contact us. And then we love to have conversations. And the whole goal is, how do we best add value to people?
Right. And I hope they do come and visit your website. And I so look forward to this conversation. But the other aspect of this is, of course, you went from Montreal Canadian hockey player, the A-list celebrity, if you will, to slightly lesser. Do you also help former hockey players or former high profile people move into slightly lesser roles? Is that also something that you do?
Well, that's a great question. We should do that. We don't seem to have that as a client focus, but that is certainly part of our experience. And that transition out of being an athlete into being something else is not an easy transition. And so yeah, good business model by you, Pat.
We'll set up something together. I
Yeah.
wonder, through all your years of playing professional hockey, how many of those guys had bad experiences moving from the professional athlete model to the not professional athlete, if you will, and how many had great experiences? If you had to ballpark a percentage, if you will.
Yeah, I don't have a we should have stats on that. And I don't have, maybe the NHL Alumni Association would have a better feel. I know lots of guys struggle, and I understand that pain of not transitioning. You're transitioning away from something that you've done for 20, 25 years into, something that's very new. And a lot of guys don't, they see their skills as on ice skills instead of in life skills, and they don't make that, don't hang on those principles at work. I think the other side, though, is it takes a little bit of creativity in a I'm going to just pick on us hockey players, hockey players' point of view, to, come out of the game and then find your next passion, your next, purpose in life. And so it does take time at times. And yeah, I would like to say 80-20, 80%, don't do as well as they were hoping. But I don't know if that's an accurate percentage or ratio.
Wow. Oh, okay. But that's actually much higher than I would have expected at 80-20. So then for that 80% that might struggle, if you had to give them one piece of good advice, I mean, creativity is one thing to say, but what would you have them do?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a struggle time, where I guess what happened to me is I would have them try different things. I would not be afraid to go into broadcasting and see if that's something, and then move on, go into business, go into coaching, like try some things, because I think we often come out and we get buttonholed, or, pegged into us. It's sort of like a, square peg in a round hole. You say, okay, I'm a hockey player. I have to do this. I have to coach. But, some people aren't built. They don't, that's not their passion. That's not their purpose.
Hmm.
I think maybe those two words would be what, I would ask, people, players transitioning to focus on, is not so much about what should you do, but how can you best help humanity?
Wow. And it kind of falls into my next question is you are a leadership coach. You are forward looking. You are trying to help humanity in the ways that you can. But do you also keep in touch with your past? Those guys that were on all those Montreal teams or Vancouver or anywhere else.
We do. Not as much as I'd like to. I tend to be a today, tomorrow guy, so I keep moving forward. But I've got some really good friends out of our time, in the NHL. A recent example of that would be Bobby Smith, who Bob and I have got a long career together. We played in the World Juniors together. Then he was drafted number one overall. I was number two overall. We both ended up in Montreal playing there. And Bob now owns the Halifax Mooseheads in the CHL. And Bob and I are in I guess what you call a study group together. We also, have been doing some stuff with his executive team. So I've been doing some, sort of executive coaching. So yeah, so it's we do stay in touch with certain people, but you know what's fun is one of my best friends coming out of the game of hockey is Mike Gartner, who has had a terrific career through NHL hockey. And Mike and I, it's funny how these things happen. You know, we don't get to see each other very often. He's in Ontario, we're out in British Columbia. But you know your friends, and I'm sure you have many of these, Pat, where you just pick up, like you spend a couple hours together, and isn't it true? All of a sudden you're back to where you were, and you're advancing your friendship. So yeah, we have many people, many players that I'd love to spend more time with, and some that are in that place of developed friendships.
Well, Ryan, let's hope that this is a developing relationship.
Thank you, Pat.
Ryan Walter joins us. RyanWalter.com, I think he said. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.